So welcome to part 2. In this one, we're going to take the high poly version and turn it into a low poly version, and you're going to end up getting a result like this. They're both very similar, but we have some very specific techniques and discussions we need to talk about because a lot of people were asking about poly count, how you do the bevels, the Unreal Engine, nanites. There are a ton of questions I had, so I try to address all of that in this video. Alright, so here's where we have to make a few decisions. So a lot of people are asking me, well, do you really need to make a low poly version for your game asset? You know, Unreal Engine's coming out with this whole nanite and poly count and this and that. A lot of people are asking me this question. Well, let me put it this way. If you have a bunch of extra detail that could otherwise be baked, what's going to happen if you don't bake that detail is you're going to have to unwrap that detail. Excuse me. So for example, like these little details right here, these little holes, these little pieces here, these little notches and stuff, these right here, all of these, if I chose to not bake it, I would have to unwrap it. And unwrapping these details would occupy additional UV space. In this case, it's extremely insignificant. It's not that much detail. But perhaps on a more complex model, if you have a lot of detail that you could bake, what's going to happen if you don't bake it is you're going to have to unwrap it. And unwrapping it is going to cost you a lot of UV space to the point where you might even need an additional material to kind of split it up and get a higher texture resolution. So this is where you're going to kind of have to choose your own path because I can't answer that question for you. The question is, do you want to just, drop the high poly into substance, texture, and be done? Do you want to make a low poly, which is what we're going to be doing here? Do you want to bake the detail? There's so many different questions that you have to answer for yourself. Now, as for my opinion, and take my opinion for what it's worth, I believe that once you make the high poly, you should make a low poly that includes removing detail that can be baked, and also, if you're concerned about actual poly count, making the bevels less around, and we're going to discuss all of that here shortly. So what we're going to do, like I said, is we're going to make a low poly version of this store, and I would really recommend you do the same because this is still a very important workflow that you should be using, especially if you're using like Unity, or maybe a client comes to you and wants a game ready asset that's properly optimized. There's a bunch of reasons you should know how to make a low poly, so we're going to do that. So the first thing I want to do is make a new collection and call it high. So I already have a collection here, and I'll just name this one high. We're going to select everything with the A key, press M, and then move it to the high collection. So everything here has been moved to this high poly collection. See that? Awesome. And I can just go ahead and delete out this random collection there. Okay, so we have a high poly collection. Now we're going to need a low poly collection. So let's right click, new collection, and call this one low. Obviously there's nothing in the low poly collection because we haven't duplicated anything from here yet. So the general process is really quite easy. What we do is we select it piece by piece, we duplicate it, we move it to the low poly collection, and then we decimate it down. Super easy. Alright, so what we're going to do is start with the door. I'm going to select the door and I'm going to press Shift D, right click to cancel the movement, and then M to press the M key and then move it to the low poly collection here. And then at this point, what I do is I select the door that we had in the high poly collection, and I just hide it so that way I don't have to see it again because we're not going to need it. So we went ahead and hid that, which means I can hide the high poly collection altogether and then turn the low poly collection on. So we can kind of do these piece by piece. So if you saw my last video on the other game asset, you may remember what we have to do here. And it's a very straightforward process. We want to find detail that we can bake and remove those booleans. And for detail that defines the form, we want to apply those booleans. So for example, if I turn this off and on, you're going to see this little piece right here. Technically we could bake this because it's on a flat surface, but usually with bigger details like this, it's pretty noticeable if it's baked. So in this situation, I would not recommend baking it. So we're going to go ahead and apply that boolean. Let's go to the next one. Sometimes you have like random booleans that don't do anything. You can just go ahead and apply those. This one defines the form here, so we have to apply that. This also defines the form. These right here can be baked very easily, so we're not going to apply these. We're simply going to press the X button to get rid of that boolean. That's why I love working non-destructively. And then for these little details in the corner, we can go ahead and press the X key, remove those. This right here, technically this could be baked, but if we try to bake this, what's going to happen is this line right here is going to show up kind of like a hovering line in the bake. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that to avoid any issues. And then we just have two more here. We have this boolean which needs to be applied. And we also have this boolean which I guess needs applied as well. Cool. Alright, so once you've went through all your boolean modifiers and you're only left with the bevel, you want to do two things. You want to set the segment count to 1. Reason you want to set it to 1 is because first of all, you can't really see a difference between a 1 segment bevel here and a 3 segment. It's so insignificant. See that? There's barely any difference at all. But if you take a look at the triangle count, at 3 segments we have 9,000 and at 1 segment we have 4,700, so roughly half. So it's a pretty significant drop just by making the segment count set to 1, which is awesome. Now for the limit method, in this case, keeping it set to angle would be fine, but what I usually do, just to have a bit more control, is I like to set it to weight. That way I can manually mark which edges I want to have beveled. So in HardOpt, what you can do is press the Control tilde hotkey and just turn on the apply B weight option and apply sharp. You can just leave it on B weight if you want. And then what you want to do is press Q and then Control Shift click to recalculate these sharps. And what that will do is it will apply a bevel weight, mark the edges you want to have beveled based off of this sharpness angle, which by default is 30 degrees. So just allows me to have a bit more control. So say for example there was an edge that was, you know, being captured when it was set to angle. I have a bit more control when it's set to weight by manually marking the edges I want to have beveled, if that makes sense. Awesome, so really easy, not much left to do here. Some people use weighted normals and some people use hardened normals. It doesn't matter too much. It just kind of depends on how the shading looks. So for right now, we're just going to leave it as is. At the end, we might end up using a weighted normal instead, but we don't have to worry about that right now. Now at this point, if you're not too concerned about your poly count, you can just go ahead and do the same exact thing to the rest of your pieces. But if you're concerned about the poly count and want to get the lowest poly count possible while still retaining quality, what you want to do, and yes, it will take a little bit of time, but what you want to do is you want to go around to all of these bevels here and decimate them down. So for example, if I select every other edge here and press Ctrl X, notice how when I dissolve that, there's not much of a difference in the roundedness, but what it actually does is it makes the poly count lower. So if you go around to all these bevels right here and do the same thing, you're going to end up getting a much lower poly mesh. So pretty easy. And also what I've done was I went up here to select, and then for check or deselect, I mapped that key by right clicking to add a shortcut. I mapped that to the Control Q menu. So what I can actually do is just use the circle select tool, Control Q, and then Control X to check or deselect. A nice and easy and quick process. So we're just going to do that to all these areas, and sometimes you'll end up getting the wrong selection, so you can just offset this by 1 and then dissolve it out. Offset this by 1, dissolve it out. And you get the idea. Yes, it will take some time, but like I said, if you're not worried about the poly count, then you don't even have to do this step. But just for those of you that want to see the process, maybe you're using Unity or some other game engine and you actually do need to have a decent poly count, I'm just going to go ahead and go through it with you. So basically, all we do is we just go to all these bevels here, Control Q, which like I said, I mapped to the check or deselect shortcut. Then I just press Control X to dissolve it out, and we just do the same thing. Now in areas like this, you unfortunately can't use that trick. It doesn't work, but if you just hold Alt and Shift click, you can go around manually and dissolve it out. Now you also want to be careful because some people will go overboard and will dissolve too much, but if you dissolve too much, you end up getting this faceted look, which some people might not really care. They might just, you know, dissolve it down and not worry about it. You'll see in games you have a lot of faceted areas around circular objects, but for me personally, I like to keep this as round as possible, so a little bit higher poly count for a bit higher quality is worth it in my opinion. But To each their own. Plus, if if you're working for someone, you'll probably have your own set of specifications, which I can't speak for. So I'm just kind of showing you what I would do if I was just doing this, as a hobby. Just for myself, really, I would choose quality over the poly count. So we'll go ahead and dissolve that down. Okay, I think we got pretty much all of that area. We also have to get this inside area. Can dissolve that out. Dissolve that out. You can also press the period key on the numpad to zoom in. Let me also turn off the shadow. It's kind of annoying. There we go. And then right here, we can go ahead and capture these. For some reason, we have like a crease marked there, but I guess we got rid of them. Control Q, Control X. Control Q, Control X. And then same here. I'm going to go ahead and remove that crease. Doesn't really matter, but it's annoying me, so. Alright, so now we just have to get into this area here. Shouldn't be too hard. Sometimes you might want to get in here with a box select and then do it that way. Right here, we're going to go ahead and take care of that. Looks like we have a very close by edge causing some overlaps, and that would actually be problematic if we were to triangulate that. So you want to make sure you don't have any overlaps at all. And an easy way to check for those is to turn on the face orientation button, and you'll see red if you actually you'll see blue by default, which means you don't have any issues. But if you don't want to see the blue, you can actually go up here to edit preferences, and under the where is it? Oh, here it is. Under themes, 3D viewport, you can set the face orientation front value to 0 on the alpha. That way you don't actually see it. So pretty cool. So now we're just going to go over here and take care of this side as well. Keep in mind, if you have a perfectly symmetrical object, it's always a good idea to just symmetrize to the other side. It'll cut the work down in half, but this piece is unfortunately not symmetrical, so we can't do that. Also, look out for these near miss vertices. You might want to merge these together somewhere. So like that. I use Machine Tools. It's a free add-on and allows you to merge things a bit quicker. This is just a random set of edges. We're going to go ahead and just merge this up here. Same for this area. Cool. And we're just about done with this piece. Now we just have to go down here, take care of this area, take care of this area, and then this is the last area left, I believe. There we go. Let's just turn the bevel back on. Make sure we have no overlaps, which we don't. Awesome. And you're going to see we have a much lower poly count. We're at about 2,476 tries versus what we had before, which was like over 10,000. Awesome. So now that this piece is done, we can just kind of pan around and make sure we didn't miss anything, which I don't think we did. Just always a good idea to check. Sometimes you may have areas that you missed. Okay, so this piece is good. It's ready. It's we can just hide it. We press the H key. We can turn off the low poly collection altogether, and now we're just going to go back to the high poly, turn it on, and then we're just going to do the same exact process to the rest of the pieces here. So, you don't have to watch this part of the video if you don't want to. If you'd rather just watch a podcast or listen to music and do it on your own, feel free to skip ahead. But I know that some people prefer to just see like a full-length tutorial, so that's of course why I'm recording this part. I want to have the entire process documented. So for this piece, we're going to go ahead and press Shift D, right click, and then M to move to the low poly collection. Then we can just go ahead and hide this, hide the entire high poly collection, then turn the low poly back on. Seems like a lot of steps, but you'll get used to it pretty quickly. Okay, same exact process. We're going to go here, go through the booleans. This right here, we could technically bake, but it won't look very good, so I'm going to go ahead and apply it. That kind of defines the form. This right here defines the form, so we're going to apply that. This right here, we, I just noticed this. What we probably should have done with these pieces is move them a little bit closer, so that way it's not intersecting on the curved area, but rather on the flat area. So let's go ahead and just move these in just a little bit. What we can just do is tab into, oh, I see. We need to go ahead and just apply the mirror here. And then if we just go into wireframe, we can box select this portion and this portion. And then we can just move this forward just a little bit so that way we're not getting these weird artifacts if it intersects with the curved area like that. We'll just move it into the flat area. Cool, and I'm going to go ahead and copy that value right down here with Control C. That way I can do the same exact thing to the high poly, but I think the high poly has the same cutters being used, so I might not have to do anything. Okay, yeah, we're good. Awesome, so back to the low poly, what we need to do is go ahead and apply this boolean. These right here can probably be baked. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. And what is this right here? This can be baked as well. Remove that. This defines the form. We're going to apply that one. These are more little notches. We can go ahead and remove those. These right here can be baked, so we're going to go ahead and remove that. Same for that one. And this hole right here has another piece inside of it, so we won't really be able to see it. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove this one as well. Cool, so what we need to do now, like we did before, is set the segment count to 1, set the limit method to weight, and then recalculate the sharps to avoid this mess. So in hard ops, you just press Q, and then Control Shift click. If you hover over sharpen, it'll tell you Control Shift click to recalculate those markings, and you're going to be good to go. So the easy way to remember the steps here is to set the segment count to 1, wait, and then recalculate. Just remember 1, wait, recalculate. Can't be any easier than that. Cool, so in this case we have a weighted normal modifier applied. I'm not going to worry about weighted normal or hardened normals at this point in time. We can deal with that later. What I do want to worry about is making the poly count lower. So we're just going to go through here and do the same thing as we did before. And by the way, what you could have done before applying this boolean here is you probably could have went to the cutter and adjusted the bevel modifier segments so that way we didn't have to do it in here manually, but I didn't even think about it, so what can you do? And this is a situation in which you want to be careful, because notice how I accidentally forgot to make the segment count even, and now we're in this weird situation where we're going to have to get rid of the holding bevel here. Not a huge issue, but something I like to avoid. Okay, so right here, this is a bit of a mess right here. Let me go ahead and first of all decimate that area down, and then we can decimate this area down. And then we can go ahead and take care of this area. Cool. And we can just go ahead and merge this one, merge them at the center. It will disturb the curvature a little bit right here, but it's very insignificant. You're going to see we do have a minor shading error right here, so to avoid that, what you could do instead is just merge this one down and merge this one down as well, and it shouldn't really be as big of a deal. It's a little bit iffy right there, but you know, limitations. What you could try doing is you could try using a harder normal instead, and it looks like that actually made the shading error a bit better. We can go into matte cap and take a look at how severe it is. Can I rotate this matte cap around? Is that a thing? I have a feeling it is, I just don't know how to do it. Let's try another matte cap. We'll try like this one. Yeah, I don't really see any shading errors in there, so not going to worry about it. Cool. So same idea for this side. Going to go ahead and just decimate this bevel down. Decimate this one down as well. And like I said, you want to be careful with situations like this. You don't want to have to hurt the holding bevel, because then you end up getting shading errors like this. So let me see, maybe it's just not flattened. SY and then 0. Nope, in this case we're probably going to need to use a weighted normal modifier instead. So let's try using a weighted normal. Set the tick box to face influence, set it to 100, and then what we can do is go into the bevel modifier and set the face strength to affected, and that might actually help these shading errors a little bit. Yeah, much better. And to be completely honest with you, I don't know exactly what these two settings are doing differently from just the default, face strength set to none, so maybe someone can enlighten me on that. I don't care what it does really, I just care if it gets the job done. There's a million articles on weighted normals and things like that, and there's a bunch of different ways that they operate. I just care about the results, so. Awesome, we're gonna go through here and dissolve these areas out. For some reason the Alt-Shift click isn't working. I believe it's because of the discontinuity over here, so we're unfortunately going to have to do another Control click to take care of this area. So we can take care of that. And then just keep it consistent, keep going through here. Awesome. And then we just go in here and take care of this area. How did I manage to fail this badly? I really thought I did an even segment here. Okay, so we need to go in this direction instead. Cool, that should work. Awesome. Sometimes shit just happens and you gotta deal with it on the go. So I'm gonna go ahead and merge this one down, maybe at the center. This one's a tough call because we're gonna definitely get some sort of shading discrepancy here if we're not careful, but it actually doesn't look too bad. It seems like it held pretty well. So I can't complain. I really can't complain. That was a decent result. Gonna merge these in the center. You just kind of have to make compromises on the curvature sometimes. I mean, what can you do about it? One of these are gonna have to be compromised or the entire boolean would have to be moved. So, situations like that are where this is precisely why you want to kind of have these curved areas in a flatter area to avoid that situation, but they're not the end of the world. I mean, go into any video game and tell me every single mesh in the game has perfect shading. I mean, there's going to be compromises that you have to take, and these are just so insignificant. I mean, you go into MatCap, you don't see really any severe issues, maybe a little bit up here, but I mean, who's going to care? It just gets into the territory of what we call pixel fucking, where you're just so over-concerned and wasting time over petty issues that, don't matter. I mean, time could be spent elsewhere. So there's kind of like there's people who argue one way or another, and I kind of understand both sides. There's got to be time that's allocated elsewhere, but also you want to have good quality. So there's situations where I agree with the people who want to be very pedantic, but I also understand, the people who just want to get stuff done. So it's kind of like a middle ground there. Okay, that looks really good. No complaints. And I think we got rid of all the bevels, right? Did we miss anything? Are all these bevels good? Nope, not up here. We forgot this area. Some people might be annoyed this takes so much time, but I actually enjoy it. You can pop on a podcast, listen to some music, grab a coffee, do it in the morning to get your brain going. It's really not as bad as some people make it out to be. So we're going to go through here. Let's go this way instead. Okay, awesome. And this side we already took care of. Great. So this one's done. You're going to see this one has about 2,000 tries versus if it had 3 segments, it would be at like double that. So once again, that's why you want to use a 1 segment bevel. Cool, going to go ahead and hide that and hop over to the next piece. There's not too many pieces left, so don't got to stress out. We can do 2 at once, so let's duplicate these 2. Right click, M to move to the low poly, and then we can just hide these 2. And then we're left here. Cool. So this detail here we technically could bake, but I don't want to try it. It might look weird, so, or it won't look weird, but it might be too noticeable, so there's not too many extra polys in here anyway, so who cares. Then we're going to set this to 1, wait, recalculate, you know the drill, and we can dissolve that down. And sometimes, like in situations like this, you can actually potentially get away with another dissolve. Yeah, we can. Gonna go ahead and dissolve that again. We are gonna have a shading error right here, but we can just use a weighted normal instead. Call it a day. Then we go right here. That one we can actually do twice. You can't really see a difference. Awesome. Gonna go ahead and hide that piece, then go to this one. This boolean can be baked, so I'm gonna go ahead and remove that. 1 segment, wait, recalculate, and then we can go in here and then just do that twice. And it looks like we might need a weighted normal modifier here instead to help the shading out a bit. Cool. So those pieces are done. Let's go back to the high poly. We can do a few more together. We'll do maybe, let's just do this one for now. Shift D, move to the low poly, hide it from the high poly, and then we just go in here. This boolean can be baked. This one right here is just a cutout, so we're going to have to apply that one. This needs applied, and this definitely needs applied. 1 segment, wait, recalculate. Awesome. Cool, so we have like a random, that'll be fine. So at this point what I want to do is I want to really decimate this one down, but this might prove to be a little bit more tedious. I'm just going to go around here and do it manually. If you guys are scared of manual work, then definitely do not use Moi 3D because there's a lot of that in there. It's very good software, has some amazing tools, but a lot of manual work you have to do in there. So for anyone complaining, don't use that software. Warning you now. Okay, gonna go here and just do this one. We can just check or deselect. Cool. We could probably do it again, but I can't be bothered. Cool. Gonna go ahead and hide that. Go back to the high poly. And we're definitely making some progress here. We're almost done. I'm gonna go ahead and tackle these two. These should be really easy. Cool. So for this one, these are all stray booleans. We can just smart apply. And then 1 segment, wait, recalculate. And there's no rounded bevel on here to deal with, which is awesome. We can hide it. This one right here, we're going to do 1 segment, wait, recalculate. And then we just go here. And for the smaller pieces, you can definitely get away with some more faceted looks on it because you're not going to really see up close on this one. But for more obvious areas, you might not want to make that type of compromise because it'll be pretty noticeable. So that's why I'm kind of, taking the sacrifice on these areas because it's such a small piece in the grand scheme of things, so I'm not going to concern myself with it. These right here are going to be baked details if you remember, so we can just go ahead and hide these. We don't need those. We don't need to duplicate them to the low poly rather. Okay, we're going to grab this piece right here and this piece right here, Shift D and then move them, and then hide them, you know the drill. These are just some stray booleans. We can go ahead and apply those on both of them. And then here is going to be 1 segment, wait, recalculate. 1 segment, wait, recalculate. Cool. Back to the high poly. Let's go ahead and take care of all of these kind of at once. So Shift D, move to the low poly. Do I even need to repeat myself anymore? Probably not. Cool. So for this one here, these are all stray booleans, so I'm going to go ahead and smart apply. 1 segment, wait, recalculate, and you can use a / on the numpad for local view. This one right here, 1 segment is already set to wait because this was a KitOps insert. we can go ahead and turn on hard and normals, and it looks like we have a weird issue with the bevel here. So to fix that, we can go here to the bevel modifier under geometry and turn off this loop slide option, and that'll actually fix that issue. Cool. And let's see. You know what, I'm just gonna leave this one as is because it's already good enough, I guess. Cool, then for this one, this boolean, I'm gonna go ahead and apply. One segment, wait, recalculate. And then here we can just probably decimate these down twice because who's gonna see it? No one really. People are more concerned about playing their game, not looking at little faceted edges on the mesh. Cool, so we're just about done here. Now we just have this little handle and the window area, so we can go ahead and take care of that. Gonna go to one segment, wait, and then recalculate. This right here can be removed. For some reason with some of these kit ops inserts, if you go into edit mode, they're hidden. So what you actually want to do is press Alt H to unhide it. And for this area, we can just go ahead and patch it up because it can be baked. If you have the F2 add-on enabled, it's built into Blender. You just press the F key to fill those in. And then to get rid of these overlapping verts, we press the A key, M, and then merge by distance. Cool. So for this piece, what we want to do is just try to, remove what we can, but it's already pretty low poly, so perhaps it's alright. I think it'll be fine. This one right here has a bunch of stray booleans, so I'm going to go ahead and smart apply those. One segment, wait, recalculate, and then here we can just go in, and you know the drill. The handle's a pretty obvious spot to look at, so I'm going to go ahead and just keep these a bit more rounded because there's going to be a lot of focus on that area. Cool. I'm going to go in here. And this area is done. Now we have some random edges right here. Just going to press Ctrl X to dissolve those out. Sometimes you'll get random issues like that. You can just get rid of them. Cool. And at this point, all we have to do is deal with the window right here. So let's go ahead and do this actual window piece first, because that'll be the easiest. So one segment, wait, recalculate, and we can just decimate this area down. Kind of weird to look at with the glass on it, isn't it? It's not too bad though. Cool, I'm gonna go ahead and hide that. And then as for this piece, I'm just going to go ahead and smart apply all these booleans, one segment, wait, and then recalculate. And this little detail here, this little crevice can be baked in. So what I'm going to do is delete out these face rings here, X, and then delete vertices. And then what we can do is fill in this area and then just hold the F key. Just like that. And then all I want to do is just make sure these are unmarked because it's going to have like a double bevel going on. So we press Q and then mark to unmark those. Maybe dissolve that out or something. Cool. And maybe this one as well. And now that one's done. Super easy stuff. Actually, no, it's not done because we can come in here and dissolve this area down a bit. Almost forgot about it. Cool. And get rid of that random edge right there. And for some reason this is like in a weird spot, so cool. I'm gonna go ahead and dissolve these areas out a bit. And then dissolve these areas out a little bit. Awesome, and now that piece is done. Cool. So now the low poly is completely finished. Same with the high poly, those are all hidden. So at this point what we can do is right click on the high poly, go to visibility, and then show all inside. So this will be our high poly. And then same for the low, right click, visibility, show all inside, and this will be our low poly. So this one has using the bevel modifier, of course, has 9,700 tries. And I assume if the bevel modifier was turned off on all of these, we can check later, but if the bevel modifier was removed, it would be at least half of that. So very good poly count for an asset of this size. And you're going to see if we were to go back to the high poly, this one has like almost 50,000 tries. So big difference there. That's why I say, guys, drop your segment counts down and decimate down your bevels if you're worried about poly count. It's so important. The face weighted normal mid poly strategy is just amazing. I love it. Cool, so at this point, we want to prepare this to, bake the detail and texture it. Most of us want to get into Substance and start texturing, I know, but before we can do that, we have to unwrap the mesh. I mean, there's no way around it. And that is where we're going to end part 2. Tomorrow, we'll get into all the unwrapping and that fun stuff. I find it fun. Some people don't, but in hard surface unwrapping, I think it's a lot more fun than you might think. So we'll get into that tomorrow on part 3.